Live Fit Podcast, episode 76 with Cliff Ravenscraft.
And this is why I'm glad that I'm free from the tyranny of the scale. After 9 months, that first year, I started to take 1 day a week off of work, and that was Sunday. And I kind of convinced myself that it would be okay to take and pull back and take an entire day off each week, as long as I would increase the number of hours that I worked the other 6 days. Yeah, but I wasn't the fittest person in the world, and at 268 pounds, I got up there, and my heart's like, "Come on, give me a break, will ya?" If I want to be a healthy and fit 80-year-old, I won't be able to do that unless daily I turn on those C10 cytokines, and that's what motivates me every day.
Welcome to the Live Fit Podcast with Glenn Johnson, your resource for all things that contribute to good health. You will hear expert advice and interviews with leading authorities on fitness, food, fat loss, mindset, and the mind-body connection. You will find show notes, articles, and health programs at livefitpodcast.com.
Yes, it is time once again for the Live Fit Podcast. I'm your host, Glenn Johnson. This is episode 76, and today I am thrilled, honored, delighted, and excited to have Cliff Ravenscraft as my guest. Now, I first heard of Cliff a couple of years ago when I was thinking of becoming a podcaster. Cliff has a podcast show called The Podcast Answer Man, where he talks about podcasting, many technical forms, but also more etiquette, trends, what works, what doesn't work, things like that for getting your audience, for keeping your audience, things like that. So I've been a fan of Cliff's for quite a while, and He's a professional podcaster, mind you, so he makes a living podcasting. He had another show. He still has it, but the name changed. It was called Pursuing a Balanced Life, which by my nature, I like that as well, because that's pretty much what I work at doing with my profession and also my person, is pursue this balanced life, not too much work, not too much play, that sort of thing. So I was listening to this show, and in fact, it was so meaningful at the time. I remember exactly where I was, the exact street I was on in the Pearl District near downtown Portland, Oregon. And Cliff was talking about his health. He has a sedentary job, extremely sedentary, and you'll hear his story in a little bit. He works long hours, many long hours, and they're all sedentary hours. So as you can imagine, his health was not the best. And he's telling me he's telling us, everybody who's listening, his story. And it was really moving, and I really wanted to reach out and help him because he's helped me and so many other people get their podcast started, keep it going, produce good quality podcasts. So I emailed him and I said, "Hey, Cliff, this is who I am. This is what I do. This is how you've helped me. I want to return the favor by helping you." Plus, there was also that underlier. This is a guy who has many people's ears. Thousands and thousands of people listen to him every week. And if he can change his health and fitness, I'm sure that he will motivate others. And after all, that is my goal in life, is to help empower 1 million people to find good health and fitness. And if some of that takes place through somebody else, that's totally fine by me. So I contacted him and said, "Hey, can I help you?" We'll get on with his story in just a little bit, but first I'd like to read a review on iTunes for this show. And this was 5 stars, and the title is Great Podcast by Jack11011. And Jack says, and I quote, "Been enjoying this podcast. Think it has some really great information. It's straightforward and enjoyable to listen to. Definitely recommended," end quote. Thank you, Jack11011. If you leave a review on iTunes, I will be happy to read it on my show. And if you've never done so and are not quite sure how to leave a review, I have a tutorial at the bottom of all of my show notes pages at livefitpodcast.com. You can leave a review in iTunes or Stitcher Radio or any other podcast catcher you like. And by the way, it really does help the show get noticed. It elevates its ranking, its stature a little bit. Plus, anybody who's interested, they'll probably read the reviews and see what you think about it to see if it's worth their time. So I thank you in advance for leaving a review. I thank everybody who has so far. And if you have not, please do me a solid. It would mean a lot to me. All right. Now I want to get on with my extra long interview with Cliff Ravenscraft. Hi, Cliff. How are you doing?
Glenn, I have never been better. It gets better every single day.
That is fantastic to hear. That is fantastic. Now, for our listeners that don't know who Cliff Ravenscraft is, you became known to me as the podcast Answer Man. And it is actually because of you that I'm doing this show right now, because you gave me the inspiration, the motivation, and most importantly, the knowledge on how to put together a podcast.
Well, that is awesome. And it's a great honor for me to be a part of your journey. And I've been doing this now going on 10 years, and I've been the part of the journey of about maybe 15, 20,000 podcasters, and it's just been very humbling.
That has to be very fulfilling. I first of all, I want to say thank you for all of the hard work you've given to so many of us. And I know you have a business out of it, and you are a professional podcaster. In fact, you're the first professional podcaster I ever heard of. But I still want to thank you because you're still putting that stuff out there.
Absolutely. It's my privilege, and I'm just... It still blows me away that people tune in and listen to me every week. And I know it shouldn't, blow me away as much as it does today. I should just get used to it. But, I've produced 30 different podcast shows with well over 3,300 podcast episodes. And it still blows my mind that people want to listen to me talk about anything that's on my mind.
Holy cow, I had no idea so many. I knew that you've done several shows, and I'm only familiar with, as far as being a listener, of what was formerly called Pursuing a Balanced Life, and of course, what I just mentioned, the podcast Answer Man. And we're going to talk about the previous one in a little bit. But the reason I wanted to bring you on this show, and we'll certainly talk about some of these other things you have going on, but from the time I started listening to you, I realized that you really had the ear of a lot of people, and people listen to you. And when you were speaking on your podcast, Pursuing a Balanced Life, about your health and some of the trials and tribulations you've had with your health, I really felt for you, because here's a guy who's really caring about other people. And you show that you care about other people. You're trying to make a living, of course, but you're doing it in a way that helps other people, which I think is really the best of both worlds. And that's why I made a switch in my career and do what I now do, for that very reason. But I also realized that the nature of your job is very sedentary, and you can't really do podcasting very well while running or walking around or riding bikes. Now, I've heard some of your episodes, you have your handheld recorder and you're walking. So that is fantastic. And I always try to get people to do that when they have meetings at work and things. But for most people, their life is very sedentary. So would you say that's a pretty fair estimate?
Absolutely. In fact, that's one of the craziest things about my journey, is the fact that I had all of these people around the world who are listening to me, and they're like, oh my gosh, this guy started podcasting as a hobby, and he's gained some success, and he's got this crazy, stupid dream of leaving his very secure job after 11 years as an insurance agent to pursue podcasting full time. Nobody does that. He's got a stay-at-home mom and 3 kids, and he's leaving this secure income, and he's pursuing this. This is crazy. And so many people were following me because, number one, they either like to watch a really awesome success story, or they like to watch a train wreck. And they were wondering which one I might be. And what happened was, I was not going to accept failure. And I wanted to encourage and inspire people. And so I pursued it with everything I had. And Glenn, what that meant was pouring everything into the work that I felt called to do. And for me, how it started out, the very first year I did this full time, I started in January 1st, 2008. For the first 9 months, I worked 7 days a week, every week, without a day off, working 12 to 14 hours a day, nonstop, sitting in front of my computer.
Holy cow. Holy cow.
After 9 months, that first year, I started to take 1 day a week off of work, and that was Sunday. And I kind of convinced myself that it would be okay to take and pull back and take an entire day off each week, as long as I would increase the number of hours that I worked the other 6 days. And that's exactly what I did. And so to celebrate, and by the way, back then I was recording 7 to 15 podcast episodes a week, and I was doing consulting and coaching and webinars and all this other stuff, equipment sales. It was ridiculous how much work I was doing.
Holy cow.
Yeah, it's crazy, right?
I know you can't see me, but my jaw's hanging open. That's an incredible amount of content you're producing every week.
Well, and that's the thing. And you know what is I'm sitting behind a microphone, so people don't see my physical appearance. They hear my voice, and my voice sounds live and energetic and passionate and all this other stuff. And what they don't see is this extremely overweight, huge, obese, unhealthy individual that's behind the microphone.
Overbeast. I kind of like that.
You like that? I was overbeast.
I like that. You invented a word, but it makes sense.
There you go. There's the title for the episode, Overbeast with Cliff Ravenscraft. So, they hear me, they hear that, and everybody's like, Cliff, you're such an inspiration to me. And I get that most of the time, but sometimes I'm just struggling inside because I just don't feel comfortable in my own skin. I'm not taking care of myself. I'm unhealthy. And what happened was in December, to celebrate my first full year doing podcasting full-time as my career, I decided on December 31st, I would do a 24-hour, non-stop, broadcasted live on the internet marathon.
Wow.
And I did it.
Marathon of what?
Of back-to-back podcast episodes. I recorded every hour for 24 hours. I recorded 24 one-hour podcast episodes.
Holy cow.
Yeah, I was ridiculous. So what happened was about 3 hours before it ended, I started having these massive gut pains. I mean, just
I bet.
It was insane. It felt like somebody took an ice pick and they were just stabbing me repeatedly.
No, that was in your Diet Coke phase though, right?
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Were you drinking a lot that night?
Yeah. Oh, I had been addicted to Diet Coke since the time I was probably 7 or 8 years old. And all the way up until about a year and 3 months ago, I was probably, if you think about those little plastic 8-ounce bottles, that's what I was drinking before I quit. Mm-hmm. I was drinking about 6 to 10 8-ounce bottles of Diet Coke a day. Yeah, not very healthy guy. No. So here's the deal. Going back, this is again December 31st, going on January 1st, 2008/2009, and about 3 hours before the thing ended, I'm sitting here with these massive gut pains, but I'm pushing through because that's what I do.
Sure.
And I make it through, and I'm like, okay, it's over. I'm going to go pass out. I'm going to go to my bedroom, and I'm going to pass out and just pray that this stomach pain goes away. I couldn't sleep. It wouldn't go away. So my wife takes me to the hospital. It turns out that I have massive, massive gallstones, like crazy amount of gallstones.
Wow.
And one of them is stuck in my, I can't remember the name of it now, but it was stuck in one of my tracts or whatever.
Right. The tube that goes from the gallbladder to the duodenum.
Exactly. And so what happened was they said, listen, we need to take your gallbladder out and remove these gallstones and remove your gallbladder. But here's the deal. You have one that's, I know it. It's called the cystic duct. Okay.
There's also the common bile duct, which is there too.
Or, it might have been the common bile duct. It was one of those two. It was a duct.
Right.
And they said, here, Cliff, you've got one stone. You have one gallstone that is stuck in this duct. And the only way to remove that is for us to go in and do this upper GI procedure. Mm-hmm. But there's a significant risk, and we need to talk to you about the risk. And the risk is death, by the way, and the percentage was high. And I don't know if it was 50%, but it was like more than 20 or 30 or something. It might have been 40 or 50%, that whether or not you'd make it through this surgery.
Jeez.
And I'm like, you got to be kidding me. And they're like, no, this is it. And I said, well, what if you just leave it there? And it's this. Well, if it stays there, no problem at all. But if we remove your gallbladder, which has to come out, by the way, there's no way you're keeping the gallbladder. But if we remove the gallbladder and the stone does fall down, it's guaranteed death, 100%.
Whoa.
Yeah. So those were my options as a result of my health. Or my lack of caring for myself physically. And so I decided to go for the whole thing. And I won't bore everybody with all the details, but let's just put it this way. Through some paperwork errors, they almost took out my gallbladder before taking the stone out. And I thankfully did not sign the permission forms, and we worked it all out. They did the upper GI, and guess what? Spoiler alert, I'm still alive. So
Congratulations.
Thank you. Yes, thank God for that as well.
Yes.
I made it through. They took my gallbladder out. I begged them. I said, guys, I know that you're not supposed to do this, but will you take my appendix out too? I hate doctors, and if I don't want to ever have any kind of pain like this again and have to come and do this ever again.
Right.
And so they took out my appendix, everything. It was like, I was like, do I need the spleen back here? I heard things about the spleen. And they were cracking up. We had a good time. But anyway, it took me a couple months to recover completely from that. And when I recovered, I decided, Glenn, I was going to do something about my health and fitness. I had to do something. Mm-hmm. And so I think it was finally right around May of 2009, I decided I was going to start the 10K a day program. You're familiar with this?
Vaguely, yeah. But you can explain it.
It's not a 10K race. It's 10,000 steps a day. So I heard about this guy named Dr. Jim Dobson from Focus on the Family, and I heard about his heart attacks many years ago. And one of the things that he had been prescribed after his heart surgery was his doctor told him he needed to lose weight, and he was going to start walking. And he was talking about this, getting a pedometer and measuring 10,000 steps a day. And I had heard a couple other people talk about this 10,000 steps a day. And I'm like, I'm going to look this up. And of course, they're talking about the fact that walking is one of the healthiest exercises next to swimming, as far as your joints and all this other stuff. And, just getting out and walking at a brisk pace, 10,000 steps a day, that's about 5 miles. That is going to bring you a greater amount of health in your life. And so I went out and bought myself a pedometer for $10, put it on my belt buckle, and I went out for my first walk to see how far I could go. And I was 272 pounds.
Right.
And I'm walking outside. It's probably May. It was probably about 80 degrees. So it wasn't hot or anything crazy like that. And I walked to the end of my street and back, and I was about ready to pass out. It was so crazy. And I looked at my pedometer. I had gone 2,000 steps. That's it. And I was out of breath. I could hardly breathe. And I needed to sit down just to kind of get rid of the nauseous feeling.
Well, let's put that into perspective, though. If you are not at all used to walking anywhere close to that far at any one time, that is a huge feat. I think that is fantastic, just to get out there and do that first time.
Yeah, I mean, and here's the deal. That first year that I started working for myself, I had left my family-run insurance agency that I was working at with my mom and dad after 11 years. And so I'm working from home. And at the time, we lived in a small house, a 1,200 square foot house. And I actually, one day, I did not go out for a walk at all. And I had my pedometer on. Mm-hmm. And here's what my day consisted of. Remember, I told you, for the first 9 months, I worked 7 days a week. Mm-hmm. Here's what it consisted of. I'd get up, walk out of my bedroom, go to the kitchen, have breakfast. I'd walk down to work and work. I'd walk upstairs to go to lunch. I'd eat lunch. I'd walk downstairs and do work. I'd walk upstairs, have dinner. I'd walk downstairs and work. And then I'd work until probably about 1 o'clock in the morning. And then I'd go to bed and I'd do the same thing the next day. I did that every day for 7 months. Here's when I had my pedometer, I did that routine one day. Yeah. At the end of the day, less than 300 steps.
Oh my God, really?
Yes.
300.
So on average, about 300 steps a day for 9 months. That's what my physical activity was, while eating way too much food and eating the worst kind of food you can eat and pounding down Diet Cokes left and right.
Well, that certainly does put those 2,000 steps into perspective.
Yeah.
And have you had any other health issues? Because I remember listening to one of your shows, and that's what really kind of tugged at my heartstrings, and also helped me realize that here's somebody that is an influencer, and people are listening to you, whether it's for your personal health or some of the other things you say. But when I heard you on this formerly known as Pursuing a Balanced Life podcast show, you talked about having many different health issues, and you were wanting to get yourself back in shape. Was there more than just the gallbladder?
Well, there was, and you're talking, I believe, about, you're probably talking about 2014, 15?
14, yeah.
2014? Okay,
Mm-hmm.
So you're talking about that time frame. That's several years in advance. I'd love to finish telling you about that 10,000 steps a day program and get to those health things later.
Okay, yeah.
Is that okay with you?
Absolutely. I wasn't sure where you were on the timeline.
Sure. So here we are. So we're at the 2000. I decide I want to go for this 10,000 step a day thing. My way of changing my lifestyle was going to be, I'm going to walk 10,000 steps a day. And this is after I get out of the hospital. This is 2009, and right around May is when I start.
Mhm.
All right. So I go out, and the first day I can do I do 2,000 steps, and I'm about ready to pass out or throw up one.
Mhm.
And so I decided, okay, here's what I'm going to do. I am going to do 2,000 steps a day every day for the next week. And then next week, I'm going to do 3,000 steps a day. And then the next week after that, I'm going to do 4,000 steps a day. And I did that, and each week I increased it until finally, after, I guess, whatever, 10 weeks or whatever, or 8 weeks, you do the math.
Right. 8
Anyway,
weeks, yeah.
I got to the place where I was doing 10,000 steps a day.
Wow.
And I was doing that every day. And the thing is back then I was doing it 5 days a week. I gave myself 2 days a week off. So that's what I did. And over the course, and by the way, while I was walking, I was listening to a podcast back then called Fitness Rocks by Dr. Monty. Well, he just went by Dr. Monty. I don't think he ever shared his last name. Mm-hmm. He was a doctor. He was also a personal trainer and fitness guy, a lot like you, but he was an actual medical MD as well.
Right.
And what he did in his Fitness Rocks podcast is he read medical journals. It was like his thing. And he read medical journals and all the research papers, and in every episode he would summarize the latest research in fitness, health, and nutrition.
Wow.
And I was eating this stuff up, which, by the way, the archives of that are no longer online. But
darn.
I know. Isn't that horrible?
Yeah, I would love to listen to it.
Oh, it was crazy. And so one of the things that I learned about from Dr. Monty was this thing called the Mediterranean diet, which, by the way, I am not a diet person. I hate diets, and I don't mean to offend anybody who is on them, but I don't do paleo. I don't do South Beach or any of that stuff. And when I say the Mediterranean diet, I'm not talking about a diet. I'm talking about the description of the type of foods that certain people eat.
Right.
So what the Mediterranean diet is the people who are the longest living people in the world, or at least at that time, were people in the Mediterranean part of the world. And the diet is what are the foods, or what's the diet of those people? What do they eat normally? And so Dr. Monty, every episode was talking about the Mediterranean diet. It's lean meat, fish and chicken. It's whole grains, nuts, beans, fruits, and vegetables. And he says, and that's what they eat. And they eat lots of that, and they're the healthiest, longest living people in the world. And so he was having influence on me through his podcast. And so not only am I walking and getting up to 10,000 steps a day, I'm also starting to change the foods that I eat and limiting my lifestyle of food to the Mediterranean style lifestyle of food, or the Mediterranean diet, if you will. Mm-hmm. And so I'm starting to drop crazy amount of weight. And so I'll just fast forward and tell you that over 18 months of doing nothing more than walking and eating healthy food, I went from 272 pounds down to 212 pounds.
Holy cow. That's fantastic.
And that took me 18 months. Now, so that was great and everything. And what happened is, I can tell you, somewhere through that process, it started initially, I wanted to get healthy. You know, I had a pretty bad scare at the hospital, as you can tell.
Oh, yeah.
But over time, that scare left me. That motivation was no longer there. And what happened is the motivation became vanity metrics. It was, am I getting 10,000 steps a day in so that I can brag about it to myself and others? And also, what's the scale say? You know, am I losing weight? And of course, back then I had this goal. I'm like, okay, if at 5'7", I'm this guy, I should be weighing somewhere around 165 pounds. So I'm going to try to get down to, even if I get down to 170, 180, that'd be great. And so it all became about, looking good, feeling good, but more than anything, getting down to that perfect weight. That's what I want to do. I want to get down to that weight. Right. And of course, as you can imagine, I had plateaus from time to time. But what happened was, after 18 months, I got down to 212. And dude, I will tell you what, I hit a brick wall on the scale.
You're sad there.
It sat there for weeks at 212. And I would go 212, I would hit 212, and then I would bounce up to 215, 216. I'd hit 212 again, and I would do and Glenn, it got so bad that sometimes I started getting like real unhealthy about the way that I would do it. It's like, okay, you know what? I'm hitting 212, and I'm only going to drink Slim Fast shakes. I'm like, what the heck is this about?
Yeah.
You know? And what happened was, you know what? I still wasn't getting below the 212. Just there's nothing I could do, it seemed. And you asked me about other health concerns. The only other real health concern that I had at the time, and I'd experienced most of my adult life, was a couple times a year I would get a sinus infection, and that sinus infection almost always, and actually always, turned into bronchitis, and a very severe case of bronchitis.
Wow.
And well, it was November 2011, I think. Yeah, November 2011. Positive of that. Okay. And I go to the doctor because I'm not feeling well. I think I have another sinus infection. He tells me, he goes, Cliff, I think you have the flu. And I'm like, I can't have the flu. I'm getting ready to go and speak at a conference in Los Angeles, and it's for my business. And you have no idea how big of a break this is for me.
Right.
This is huge. And by the way, I was right. It was huge, because since then that has translated into more than $400,000 in income.
Wow.
So it was a huge deal that I knew was coming. There was nothing I could do. He says, well, I'm going to give you this stuff and this Tamiflu and stuff like that. And that'll make it to where with it, by the time you're getting ready to be on the plane, you won't be contagious or anything like that. And whatever the stuff was, I can't remember.
Right.
So he says, you'll be fine to fly. He goes, but and he says, but if you need anything else, if you're not feeling better, call me, is what I thought he said. Well, anyway, I get on the airplane, and I had nasal congestion, and because of the altitude, it was literally my eyeballs almost popped out of my eye sockets. It was the most insane pain I ever had, just this congestion in my head at that altitude.
I'll bet.
And I got to LA, and I did my talk, and I'm just laying in my bed in the hotel room, and I'm about ready to just die. I feel so bad. And I called the doctor, and I said, what's going on? He says, dude, he says, I think you just got this bug. He goes, did you get the antibiotics that I prescribed you? I'm like, yeah, how are those going? I'm like, I didn't know you prescribed me antibiotics.
Oh no.
Yes, I wanted you to take the antibiotics too. And I'm like, oh crap. And so we had him forward, and long story short, I had him transferred over, and I started taking my antibiotics. But here's the deal. With that bout of sickness, first of all, I had to, I was sick before I left for my trip. And so I didn't get as much done to prepare to leave for this, whole week and a half long trip that I was going to be gone for business.
Right.
And I'm sick through the whole thing. And then I come back, and I'm still sick. And Glenn, this is the first time since I started that routine where I'm not walking every day anymore, because I'm sick and I'm, just out of my routine. And next thing you know, I'm traveling, and for the first time, I'm at these airports. I'm hungry. I'm sick. I'm eating crap food for the first time in my life, or first time in 18 months.
Wow.
And next thing you know, I'm eating more crap food, and I'm just laying there, and I feel all of a sudden my head is starting to, not like physically, but mentally, my head is starting to mess with me. I'm starting to feel like this lack of confidence and just all these other things. And next thing you know, I come back, and I've completely lost the will to keep up everything that I had been doing.
Oh,
and
no.
Over time, basically I'm starting to eat, it got so bad. There was one time where my weight was going up so much, and I decided, you know what, I'm going to start walking again. I'm going to get that pedometer out. I'm going to go walk again. And I was walking, and guess what? I would walk 10,000 steps. And I said, I'm going to do this. And every single day, Glenn, I hate to even admit this to you, but it's just the truth. And that's who I am. I tell the truth.
Yeah.
I'm going out. I'm walking on a 5-mile walk, but every day in my old neighborhood, I'd pass McDonald's. And I stopped after my walk, and I would get a plain double cheeseburger meal with large fry and 2 apple pies for $1 and a Diet Coke.
To reward yourself.
To reward myself for going out for that walk. And it long story short, I had gone all the way back up to 268 pounds.
Right.
So I didn't go all the way to 272, but boy, was I close.
You were close.
It was ridiculous. And, and here's the deal. Throughout this period of time from, November 2011 all the way up to 2014 when you heard me and reached out to me,
Yeah.
there were all kinds of starts again. It's like, I'm going to get back up on that horse. And I would tell people in my podcast, this show that you've referred to a couple times, it's been called the Pursuing a Balanced Life Show. Yeah. Today it's called the Cliff Ravenscraft Show. But anyway, in this podcast, it's kind of like an audio journal. And there's like 641 episodes of this show today. Mm-hmm. So I'm sharing all of this, everything, good, bad, ugly, everything. I'm just being authentic and just sharing, this is who I am. And if you don't like me, that's cool. But this is who I am and this is my life. It's my journey. If you want to follow along, feel free to do so. And so I would tell people, I say, okay, I'm going to do this. And I would have 6 weeks of success. And there were times when I would even say, I'm going to stop stopping at McDonald's. and things would be great for a couple months, and then I'm off the wagon again, and just off again, on again, off again, on again, and mostly off. And every single time, I'm like, I would go to my audience and say, okay, guys, I don't even want to tell you, but I want to start out. I want to start this again. I want to start getting healthy. I want to get back to a healthy lifestyle. And I know you guys, there are about 1,000 people I know that have listened to every single episode of this podcast since I started it in March of 2006. Mm-hmm. And I know you guys are sick and tired of hearing me say it, but I'm going to start again. and I'm like, I'm going to do it this time. And there's one where I went for 6 months and freaking fell off the wagon again.
Oh.
And I'm like, crap, what the heck? And so here's the deal. And Glenn, I don't know if you've ever heard me tell the story from this side. But I recall you reaching out to me, and yes, you said, Cliff, I've listened to your Pursuing a Balanced Life, and you were mentioning your health concerns. And at the time, I didn't really say what those health concerns are. Mm-hmm. But here's what I can tell you. I was starting to experience numbness in my feet and in the fingers and stuff like that. Ooh. And I'm thinking, do I have diabetes? And not only that, but I'm having some abdominal cramping and some other things. And it's like, I feel awful. I mean, I know what it is. It's the food that I'm eating. It's the Diet Coke that I'm drinking. It's the inactivity. And I know I need to do something. And so you probably caught me in, I think it was, 2014. Yep. You caught me right around that period of time when it was October of 2014. Okay. And you caught me right when I said, I know I need to do something, but I'm flat out going to tell you, I don't want to do anything right now. I know I need to, and trust me, there are things in my life I'm not telling you about. I need to, but there's something in my head. I'm not ready. I'm not ready to commit yet. And then that's when you reached out to me. You gave me this really awesome email. You introduced who you were. You told me about what your credentials are and the credibility that comes behind the help that you were offering. Mm-hmm. You told me that you weren't looking for any kind of money. You just wanted to help me because you have this goal. And I remember I read the email. It took me a little bit to respond to you because I didn't know how to respond. And finally, in my own words right now, I would paraphrase. I said, Glenn, listen, I really appreciate this offer. It means a lot to me that you would do that. A couple things. Number one, part of me, I have no idea who you are. I don't mean that to be offensive, but I don't know you. And I'm at a place in my life where I know I need to do these things. And I'm not there. Right. I just am not ready to commit. And I know that I need to work on that. And I said, here's the deal. I have so many people that interact with me, engage with me, send me emails and stuff like that. I don't mean this to sound as awful as it sounds, but what I'm going to tell you is that I'm going to pray about this. And if I feel that God's leading me to work with you, I'll reach out to you. But if I don't feel that prompting, you might not hear from me again. And I know how horrible that sounds, but the reality is I didn't want to put it on my to-do list that I have to call Glenn and tell him one way or another because, I just had so many other commitments, that I had to do. So,
well, Cliff, how that was received is exactly how you intended it to be received, because I knew where you were coming from, and I know a person has to be ready in order to make this change. And that's one of the things I really wanted to bring to the attention of the listeners throughout this entire story is that once you made up your mind to change, you did change. And all those attempts you had made up until then, you thought you made up your mind, but you didn't. You were trying to grace by with old habits and old thought processes going forward, but that doesn't work after a certain point. And so, and I knew I was catching you at a vulnerable time when you just needed a little nudge in the right direction. And it didn't have to be me, but I wanted it to be me because you had helped me and I wanted to help you. And I also knew that since you are such an influential person and you're out there, just the fact of people seeing a transformation from you might help others want to pursue a more healthy and balanced life, shall I say.
Yeah. Well, and that's what you wanted, and that was my response to you. And so, and here's the thing: I was true to my word. I literally, after I sent that email to you, I remember praying probably several different times throughout the weeks, saying, "God, is this guy, this Glenn, is he somebody that you're sending to me? Is this somebody you've put in my path? And if so, make it clear to me. I mean, lay it on my heart. Wake me up in the middle of the night and say, I got to send Glenn an email. That give me that kind of thing." And it never came like right away. It just never came. Mm-hmm. And so I said, okay, this isn't coming. I said, and I'm still experiencing, all kinds of things in my life. And so it was still October. This was maybe about 2 weeks after you had emailed me. I go to Colorado. I go to Vail, Colorado, and I'm going there for a training conference on public speaking to take my public speaking to the next level. And I go to this conference in Vail, Colorado, and I'm in this altitude of way above what I'm usually at. And the conference hall had the bathrooms down on this lower floor, and they had the steps that you had to, go down to go to the bathroom. And so I went down to go to the bathroom, and then I had to walk up the steps in Vail, Colorado, in this altitude. And dude, I walked up and I got to the top of those steps and my heart felt like it was going to pop out of my chest.
Ooh.
It was insane. I'm like, oh God, there's no way. I mean, I can't even walk up the steps. And now granted, I'm not used to this altitude.
Oh yeah, it makes a big difference.
And if anybody's never been there, then this may make no sense to you. You might think, well, gosh, Cliff, it's like when you started 2,000 steps. No, there's a big difference when you're in Vail, Colorado, and you're at that altitude. Even if you're healthy, I think that you'd have a little bit of a higher respiration rate than normal.
Absolutely. The fittest person in the world who's fit at sea level is going to feel the altitude.
Yeah, but I wasn't the fittest person in the world, and at 268 pounds, I got up there, and my heart's like, "Come on, give me a break, will ya?" and I'm like, God, what am I doing? What I need something. But Glenn, please forgive me.
Okay.
But I even said, God, I can't even remember his name right now. But if it's not that guy, who is it?
Yeah,
because that's what it was at this point. It's like if it's not the guy who emailed me, then who is it? Who I mean, is there somebody? Do I need to just do this on my own? What's the deal here? Well, I come back home and I have more work to do because, well, I have to prepare for a big, huge talk, a presentation that I'm giving in Colorado Springs, Colorado in November. So in November, 1 month later, I'm back in Colorado. The altitude wasn't quite as high as Vail, but it was still higher elevation. Mm-hmm. And the guy who runs the conference was the business partner with Michael Hyatt. His name is Ken Davis. And some people who are listening may have heard of Ken Davis. He's a very well-known, very popular Christian comedian. But anyway, he's the guy who ran these conferences, and I've been speaking at their conferences for years. And Ken and I had developed a pretty close relationship, and he's been following my journey as well. He's seen me in the ups and downs, if you will. And I got up on stage, and of course, I've had the privilege of speaking, opening keynote addresses and speaking in public in front of hundreds and thousands of people. And Glenn, every single time, it has been like the most emotionally challenging thing in my life because people are on the stage. I get up on the stage and I know a lot of people are like really inspired by my message and the things I have to share and stuff like that. But the reality is I'll sometimes take my video camera and I'll record myself and I'll go back and I'll watch the video and I'm like, gosh, that is one heavy, obese, overweight looking guy.
And that's all you see?
That's all I see. I see a miserable failure. That's what I see. And I see, and almost to the point where, I have I have many, many thousands of people that are just like, Cliff, you don't know how much you've positively impacted my life. You've changed my life. You've done this. And I so look up to you. And every single time it's like, that's like a dagger to my chest.
Really?
And it is. And the reason why is because I really don't want you to look up to me, because if looking up to me means that you want to be like me, I don't want you to be like me. Because being like me means that you're overworked, overweight, sedentary, and you eat like crap. But yeah, you make tons of money, and everybody else likes how much money you make and how much work you do and the content you create. But the reality is that your priorities are so freaking out of whack that you're not the husband that you are called to be. You're not the dad that you're called to be. And you're not taking care of yourself and your body the way you should, and you're going to die in the next 5 years.
Wow, all that going through your head from somebody saying that one thing. And you're not alone. And I've heard this so many times from other clients and people I've spoken with. And so I totally understand where you're coming from. You are listening to the Live Fit podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, you can show your appreciation by rating, reviewing, and subscribing. You can also view show notes and links at livefitpodcast.com.
So, and by the way, those thoughts are never more clear in my mind than the day that I go up and speak on a stage in front of an audience. By the way, I can come back home, and after being in front of an audience, after 2 or 3 weeks, I can forget the fact that I had those thoughts, and I could be here where I am right now. Glenn, how do you think I look right now? I look great, right?
Yeah.
The reason why, because you can't see me. You hear my voice. But and by the way, the reality is I look pretty damn good right now.
I know you do.
I'm just saying.
I've seen recent pictures. I know you do.
So, but anyway, but even when I didn't look good, at least I sound good, and I'm nobody's looking at me physically, and so and even if I share something, at least it's just my fat chubby cheeks, right? They don't see anything below my shoulders because I'm in control of the camera.
Yeah, yeah.
And so I'm able to hide it and stuff. But man, so it's November 2014, and I'm at the platform conference. I speak, and everybody loves it. My thinking is that, there's probably a couple hundred people there. There's probably at least 100 that say, I'm not going to listen to that fat guy. I mean, if he can't even control his own eating habits and stuff like that, if he can't take care of himself, what value does he have to offer to me? And of course, if I were in the audience and I were looking at me, that's how I would feel about myself. I'm like, seriously, it's like, I have a hard time with me. And, and it just so happened to be that, that day back in October, I had went out and purchased brand new pants for the Vail, Colorado conference that I was going to. Mm-hmm. And when I got on right before the morning before I got on stage in Colorado Springs, just a month later, my pants were already too tight.
Really?
Yeah, it was that bad. And so I'm like, of course, that didn't make me feel any better. And my suit coat was, the button was like, pulling apart. I'm like, seriously, this is ridiculous. What the heck am I doing to myself? I just feel like I'm miserable. And of course, then I get on the stage and I have this talk and I'm able to pull it off and stuff like that. And that evening, Ken Davis invited me and Stephanie to have dinner with him and his wife. Mm-hmm. And while we were at dinner, he says, Cliff, he goes, I hope you don't mind. I said, this is not why I invited you to dinner, but I just feel led to do this. I've never done this for anybody before, but I want to tell you about my story. And so he shared his story about his experience with his weight and stuff like that. And he shared with me a picture of when he was almost 300 pounds, maybe even more than 300. I can't be quite for sure. Mm-hmm. But he showed me a picture of what he used to look like. And then, of course, I see what he looks like now. I'm like, you got to be kidding me. Now, by the way, Ken Davis, at the time, 68 years old. Wow. The same day that I went in Vail, Colorado, the same day where my heart almost exploded out of my chest because I walked up the steps, mm-hmm. the same day that 68-year-old man, Ken Davis, had gone for a 3-mile run up the mountain and back. 68 years old. He is a picture of health. All right. So he's like, Cliff, I want to tell you about how I've changed my life. And he goes, I've never done this before, but he says, I want you to feel free to tell me no, but I want to offer to personally be your mentor in health and fitness.
Nice.
And I'm like, yeah, okay, tell me more. He goes, but the thing is though, it would require a lot of commitment if you decide to do this. And he goes, here's what I would ask you to commit to. Number one, I would ask you to read my book, Fully Alive. And it tells my story of how I got to the place where I came to where I live fully alive every day. And he said, the next thing I would have you to do is I want you to read a book called Younger Next Year.
Oh, that's a good book.
And he says, regardless of what you think about evolution, you can toss out whatever you think you need to toss out. But the biological information, the science behind the biology of exercise, the biology of strength training, it's top notch, and you need to hear it. And he says, you read this book, that's your second commitment. Now, this book is going to lead you to some other commitments, and I'm going to ask you to make those as well. And here's the big one, and this is the one that really got me, okay? He says, I want you to commit to working out 6 days a week, every week, for the rest of your life.
Wow. That's a big commitment.
Yeah. And he says, and by the way, that's a minimum of 45 minutes per day. And starting out, your 45 minutes will all be kind of cardio aerobic focused exercise. But once you can get to the place where you're doing that pretty regularly, I want you to then transition to where 2 or 3 days of the week are hardcore strength training, lifting weights, breaking apart and tearing your muscles. And he says, so he goes, that's what I want you to commit to. And he says, and there's one other thing. And I'm like, what's that? He goes, I want you to I want you to do a triathlon with me in May in Nashville. And I'm like, that's 6 months away. And I'm like, what? And he says, it's a sprint triathlon. It's not a full one. So it's
short distances.
It's short distances. But I think it was like 800 yards, 400 yards of swimming or something like that, and 10 miles of bike ride and 2-mile run or something like that.
Yeah.
And he said, yeah. And so he says, I want you to commit to that. And let me tell you, I had been praying, God, is there somebody that you want to send? And and this came at this dinner. And so I said, Ken, I said, let me pray about this and get back to you. And he says, sure, Cliff, no problem at all. He goes, and I said, Ken, hold on. And he says, what? I said, I've prayed about it. And the answer is yes, I'll do it.
Nice.
Right there.
As you were telling the story, I was thinking, it sounds like somebody heard your prayers.
Yeah. And so that's exactly what happened. And I came home and I instantly got started. Matter of fact, I started on December 4th, or let's see here. Was it November? I started November 14th, 2014. And Excellent. I created a podcast episode, and it was called The Day I Decided to Start Living. Excellent. And I will tell you, Glenn, that was November 2014. It is now February 1st, 2016. Mm-hmm. I have worked out a minimum of 6 days a week, every week since that time. I now do at least 3 days of heart rate cardiovascular focused exercise, 3 days a week, minimum 45 minutes. And 3 days a week, I do 1 hour of hardcore, totally ripping every muscle apart in my, I do Tuesday nights, I do chest and triceps. Thursdays, I do legs and shoulders. And Saturdays, I do back and biceps. I walk out of the gym on leg day, my legs are rubber bands.
Yes.
I walk out of the gym on Saturdays, I can't even hardly take a post-workout selfie because I can just barely lift my phone.
Oh, geez.
It's crazy. But I love it. Oh, it is the greatest thing. My life has completely changed. December of 2014, I gave up a 30-plus year addiction to Diet Coke. And since then, I only drink water, and I do occasionally drink something called Zevia, which is an all-natural stevia sweetened beverage, but I only drink that with breakfast, lunch, or dinner. And most of the time, I still drink water instead anyway. So I'm addicted to water. I love water now.
You are really cleaning out your body, boy.
Yeah, and then of course, so I started working, and at the same thing, I started working out first, and it was a couple weeks before I changed my eating habits. But then I started going back to the Mediterranean style foods, and that's what I was doing. And I had obviously I'd seen some significant weight loss, and I think I can't remember where I was, but I started to see that I was plateauing. I'd already had one little plateau and I broke through it, but then I saw another plateau. And then I thought, who was that guy that emailed me a year ago? and so I went and searched for the email that you sent me. And then I found you and I reached out to you and I said, hey, do you remember who I am? And that offer, is it still valid? And you said, absolutely.
Yes, absolutely.
And you started coaching me and we started talking and you gave me so much valuable information. I started listening to the Live Fit podcast. And just consuming everything I could, learning from it, learning about the different stuff about insulin. I now know because of you, I know that insulin is produced when my sugar kicks in, and when that hormone is in my body, it actually will help. That actually will take whatever calories I have and store it as fat.
Yes.
While that stuff is kicking, I've learned.
The other thing about that most people don't know is that when insulin is in your system, you cannot burn fat. So you will not have lipolysis. There will be no fat breakdown. So you have to burn the glucose that's in your bloodstream.
Right. Exactly. And so I learned this stuff from you, and I'm like, oh, and the other thing that I learned is like, hey, every morning I was eating the same thing, but I was eating, I was eating whole wheat toast. Or the, Ezekiel 4-9 bread, and I was eating some snacks, sugary snack here and there, but, only an occasion. And you gave me some tips on things. It's like, what if you cut out the rice? What if you cut out the sugar? What if you cut out the bread? And I did those things, and lo and behold, guess what? I broke through the plateau.
Excellent.
And then it was probably about maybe 4 months ago, I hit the 212. And guys, I got to tell you, I hit the 212 and I bounced up to 214. I hit the 212, I bounced to 215. I hit the 212 and I'm like, you've got to be kidding me.
Another one.
And I went in to see my personal trainer and I told him, he says, okay, he goes, we're going to do something different. And so we started doing some high interval training. What is it called? High intensity interval training. That's it. I forgot the intensity. So the high intensity interval training, we started incorporating that in between the sets of weightlifting that we were doing. And by the way, my personal trainer is a Marine, so he tears me apart. And I go in there and I go in with a dry shirt and I literally could wring sweat from my shirt when I'm finished. And
that's good.
We started doing that and boom, that plateau was gone. I broke the 212 barrier. Today I sit right between 199.5 and 200.5.
Right there, just hovering.
Yeah, and so by the way, that means I've lost 68 pounds since November 14th of 2014. And that's 68 pounds that's on the scale.
Right.
But I've built more than 20 pounds of muscle.
Have you done a body composition test to see where your body fat is?
Not anything more than the little handheld thing that you do at the gym.
Okay.
But I know it's not accurate, but but here's what I can tell you. It is showing me the progress that I'm making. So I'm seeing the trend is, the body fat's going down. And what I can tell you is that I have a habit in the bathroom now, and it's kind of conceited, but I pull my I'm doing it right now. You can't see me, but I'm pulling my t-shirt, my sleeve up. I pull it all the way to my neck, and then I flex and I look at my muscles in the mirror. I love it.
You're gonna have to send me a picture of that.
Well, I'll tell you what. Anybody who wants to, all they have to do is this, Glenn. Have them go to this website address, podcastanswerman.com/6 months. And that's SIXMONTH, one word. If you go to podcastanswerman.com/6 months, you'll see my before and after pictures at the very top, my May of 2014 compared to May of 2015 or November of 2014 to May of 2015. But if they keep scrolling and keep scrolling and keep scrolling, they'll see my very first picture I ever took of me flexing in the mirror.
Yeah.
The first bulge of a bicep. It was awesome. You'll see if you keep scrolling, you'll see a side-by-side comparison of my post-workout selfies. And then finally, if you look, there's an update at the very bottom from November 13, 2015, 1 year update. And it's finally the very first time I've ever put the before and after photos of me without my shirt on. There is a photo of me without my shirt on before I lost any of the weight.
And did you take that picture for a reason, for this very reason?
Yes, I did.
Good for you.
Yeah, because I had lost weight before, and I knew that I wanted to have these this time.
That was very fortuitous of you. And incidentally, for anybody listening who's driving and can't write that down, I'm going to have a link to the page you just shared and other contacts for you on my show notes page at livefitpodcast.com, episode 75.
Yeah.
76.
76. So and by the way, feel free, Glenn, if you want, you can right click Save As and pull the black and white before and after photo and put it right into your show notes in blog post or whatever if you want to. I'm not telling you what to do.
No, I will do that.
Do it.
I want that on my show notes page.
And if you email me, I'll send you the very first time I ever kind of flexed in the mirror without my shirt on after this, because it's actually, I mean, it's pretty impressive, this 1 year update. But more recently than that, I took a picture of myself flexing in the mirror without my shirt on, and my muscle definition is significantly better now. So I know it sounds vain or whatever, but you know what? It's so exciting to me. And here's what I can tell you. People ask me, because I'll share with people. It's like, I finally did it. I broke the 212 barrier, and I said, oh my gosh, I'm less than 200. And you know what everybody asks me? What question do you think every single person asks me? Yes. What's your goal weight?
Oh, okay. What's your goal weight? So why aren't you lower or something like that?
No. It's not why are you lower, but they ask me. It's like, oh, that's great. What's your goal weight? What's your goal weight? And you know what I tell everyone?
What's that?
There is no goal weight. But what I can tell you is that my goal is 15% body fat.
Very nice.
That's my goal. I could care. I am finally free from the tyranny of the scale.
Very nice. Very nice. And, I wanted to point out that you said you've lost, 60 some pounds, and you've gained some muscle. You don't know how much muscle you've lost, but I would say easily 15, 20 pounds. Yeah. From the sound of it and from what I've seen from your photos.
Yeah. I believe I've put on at least 20 pounds of muscle, which means I've burned 88 pounds of fat.
That's right. That's tremendous. So have you had any setbacks? You sound like you've just been moving like a locomotive for the last year and a half.
Actually, through it, there have been a couple times when, I don't believe in a cheat day because, well, there's nothing to cheat on. I'm not on a diet.
Right.
But there have been some times when I've allowed myself to have a sugary snack here and there. And the next thing you know, it's like, wait a second, I just had a sugary snack and now I'm having another sugary snack. And I'm not going to say there hasn't been days where I've allowed myself to eat a little bit more than what I would normally want myself to eat for. Because what I do is when I eat, I think about what am I doing? I want to eat food that will provide the energy levels that I desire to have in my day. That's what I think about when I eat food.
Food is fuel.
However, there have been a couple times when I want to eat for the satisfaction and the good feelings and whatever endorphins or whatever gets released in my brain that comes from eating that sugary or salty snack.
Right.
And there are some times when I do that and I'm like, whatever. And of course there are some times when I'll do that and then I'm like, okay, I'm going to go pay for that right now. I'm going to go hop on the elliptical and work that off.
Good for you.
And I'll do that. And there are some times when I say, you know what, screw it. I'm allowed to work out 6 days a week. I'm allowed a day off. Yes, I'm 340 calories over my budget for today and I'm not working out. It's no big deal. Tomorrow is a new day, and what I did today isn't a failure. It just is what it is. And so when I hit those days, Glenn, here's what I can tell you: if I just recently hit a low, let's just say I just got down to 200.
Yeah.
Well, I know that I'm going to bounce to 202, 203, maybe even 204 as a result of this day or maybe a day and a half of eating a little bit different than what I know I should. And the reality is and this is why I'm glad that I'm free from the tyranny of the scale, is because I'm consistently changing the amount of how much hydration's in my body, and so that's changing. I know that I'm working out. Sometimes I'm adding muscle mass and all this other stuff. And my goal is, I want to get to 15% body fat. That's my goal. I want to get down to where that's when you look at me, you see muscle, you see strong, you see strength, you see health, and it's not necessarily a number on the scale. Because I do, by the way, I have an ultimate goal, and that is one day I will be on the front cover of either Men's Health or Men's Fitness magazine.
Oh, I like it.
That's what I can tell you. I don't know what it's going to take to get there, but I will. And if that means I have to become a celebrity to do it, then by golly, I'll have to find a way to make that happen as well. But I am going to be on the front cover, and I'm going to be one of those guys where you're gonna see the before picture and the little thing down at the bottom. It's like, this is what he looked like before, and here he is on the front cover of this magazine. And I'm not going to look like Arnold Schwarzenegger or one of those guys that are a
bodybuilder.
I'm not going to look like a bodybuilder, but by golly, I'm going to look buff.
But you're going to be a fit, buff, regular person.
That's exactly what I'm going to be.
And I love your line, the tyranny from the scale. I think that's fantastic. And so many people do get kind of caught up on their weight, and I spend a good amount of effort trying to explain to them the difference between the different types of weights that can be on your body. So I'm really, really pleased to hear that. And that goes back to what I was saying before, that you made up your mind, you changed your mind, you changed your mindset to be a healthy person rather than trying to live off of borrowed health from your younger days.
Yeah, and if I can share one other thing, if you can still fit this into this episode.
Yeah.
Because let me tell you, there is one other thing. I believe that this message that I'm about ready to share might potentially change some people's lives.
Good. Let's hear it.
All right. So when I first started, I'm going to work out 6 days a week, every week for the rest of my life. I will tell you, the whole idea of for the rest of my life, it was 6 days a week, every week. That wasn't as jarring to me. But man, when I said I'm going to commit to the rest of my life, all of a sudden something became real about that. However, I thought that my motivation for accomplishing this was going to be the goal of being prepared to do a triathlon without killing myself.
Yes.
So I thought that I was going to come home, and on November 14th, when I started working out 6 days a week, I thought that I was training for a triathlon. All right. Yeah. And that's what I thought I was training for, because I was not going to get there and not be able to swim those 8 laps of the pool or do that 10 miles of bike riding. So I was training for the triathlon. And it wasn't until I got to, I think it's chapter 5 or chapter 6 of the Younger Next Year book. But the day that I read the chapter called The Biology of Exercise, and by the way, I know all about cytokines. How about that? I know all about the cytokines. And of course, the author says, you know what, they're more complicated than this, and there's so many of them. But for the sake of this, we're going to just call them C6s and C10s. And normally the C10 or the C6s are going to be breaking down. They carry a message of decay throughout your body, throughout your bloodstream. And that's your normal mode. And when you work out and you start sweating, usually about 20 minutes in, the chemical makeup of your blood, the cytokines, switch over to C10s. And C10s are a message of repair and renewal. And that's the stuff that's going to be rebuilding your muscle, repairing things. It's going to be boosting your immune system. It is literally going to be like, it's like a drug of health that goes through your body. It changes their blood. And let me tell you, when I read that chapter, Glenn, all of a sudden, all I could think about is, I'm not training for an event. I'm training for C10s.
You are.
I am training for life.
You're training for the sport of life, to borrow a line from Horizon Fitness.
So that's what changed me. And from that point forward, I will tell you this, and it's almost bad that I had that mind shift, but it's a great thing as well. Because here's what I can tell you. As soon as that clicked for me, all of a sudden it's like, you know what? I'm in this. I'm in it for life. I can't wait. I'm excited. And it has nothing to do with this triathlon. And in fact, I was starting to get really bummed about the fact that I had agreed to do a triathlon, because I had zero desire to swim and I had zero desire to run. I fell in love with cycling though. And
good.
I'm like, man, I don't want to train to run. I don't even want to train to swim. I like all these different things, but I don't want to do this. And I'm like, and I told my wife, I said, she goes, you made a commitment. You're doing it no matter what. I'm like, fine. Well, I completed the triathlon. It was fine and stuff like that. Well, I did tell Ken, I said, Ken, I kind of bummed that I told you I'd do this because I'm excited, but not anymore because of the triathlon training, but because I'm excited about this. I said, I kind of don't even want to do the triathlon, but I'm going to because I told you I would. And he said, good. He goes, Cliff, I hear that a lot from people. He goes, but here's the thing I can tell you. He says, Cliff, you're going to get there, and the adrenaline of that day and being surrounded and being cheered by all those people, and then the feeling that you will have the minute you cross that finish line, as soon as you're finished, you're going to say this, I can't wait till the next one. Yeah. And I said, Ken, I will totally hear that. I will receive it. And I will accept the fact that you may be right, and that's exactly how it will happen. Mm-hmm. But I don't think it's going to happen that way. And here's what I can tell you.
Yeah,
I crossed the finish line that day. It did feel pretty darn awesome.
I'll bet.
But you know what? I was not ever going to do another triathlon. I was never going to do another marathon or anything else. The only thing I could think that I might possibly do is maybe some cycling events, because I have fallen in love with cycling, but not because of the training and not because of crossing the finish line, but because I love cycling. But here's what I can tell you. I did feel that. But here, the interesting thing, one of the things that I started doing in November of 2014, the very first day that I finished my workout, I took a picture of myself called a post-workout selfie.
Yeah.
And I posted it on my Facebook page and in my Instagram, and I shared it on social media. And I said, guys, I know I'm fat and unhealthy, and my face looks ridiculous, and I'm sorry to mess up your timeline, but I just worked out, and I'm pretty darn excited about it. And I'm doing this 6 days a week, every week for the rest of my life. And they're like, yeah, until you fall off the wagon. They didn't say that, but I'm sure that's what they were thinking. Right. And then the second day I worked out, I took a post-workout selfie. The third day, and you know what happened? Is every single day I finished working out and I published that picture, that was me crossing the finish line. Every day I finished 40 minutes, I crossed the finish line. And I said, Ken, you know what? I've completed the triathlon and it felt great, but you know what? It doesn't feel different than any other day because I crossed the finish line every day that I complete a minimum of 45 minutes of a workout.
Yeah, I'll say you do. That is fantastic. I like your idea of the post-workout selfie. We should get more people to doing that.
Check out this and put this in your show notes. You ready?
Yeah.
Trainwithcliff.com. It's a website. It'll take you to an Instagram tag search. So if you go to trainwithcliff.com, you'll see myself and anybody else who is out in my community who also are taking their post-workout selfies, who put the hashtag trainwithcliff on Instagram.
Oh, wonderful. All right, I'll be sending some there too.
That would be awesome. I'd love to see you on there.
Yeah, I'm going to go for a run right after we're done here.
Awesome. So yeah, but the big deal here, here's what I know. I have some friends of mine who over the years have done a lot of the yo-yo back and forth in their weight, and it seems like a lot of them get really excited and they say, I'm going to get back on the wagon. And the first thing that they do is they sign up for an event, whether it be, whatever event, one of the marathons, triathlons, you name it.
Right.
And they get out there and you know what? They do crazy, insane stuff to prepare for it. I mean, they're out there doing 18-mile training runs.
Whoa.
Yeah. I mean, of course, that's close to it, not like every day, but, if they're doing a marathon, every now and then they have an 18-mile run as one of their training day. And so... And basically I'm like, you got to be kidding me. You're out there. You just ran for 3 hours or 4 hours or whatever. And they're seeing great weight loss and stuff like that. And the next thing you know, I see their picture of them crossing the finish line. And you know what I don't see after that?
Doing any more?
Anything. I don't see anything. And the next thing you know, 3-4 months later, I'm like, hey, what's going on? And it's like, or they're commenting on my post-workout selfie, and they're like, dude, I need to get back at it. And I'm like, dude, you were killing it. Yeah, after the triathlon, I just didn't do it. Or after the marathon, I didn't do it. It's like, dude, you need to stop training for those events and you need to start training for life.
Well, and that's the problem with those events is that you train for the event and then they're over. So what I always recommend to people who are training for an event is to schedule the next one before you do this first one. So always have one on the calendar. So maybe you take a couple days off, but you don't take an undefined amount of time off.
Yeah. And for me, what I've done is I said, you know what? I sign up for an event 6 days a week, every week for the rest of my life.
Right.
And I literally do consider every day an event.
And that's a great way to think about it. And you know, that's 6 days a week, and that is fantastic. Some people really are motivated by having an event to be in public and have to perform. Other people absolutely do not. And it doesn't really matter one way or the other. Whichever you are, work to your strengths. And you've found a pattern that really works well for you. And I am just thrilled beyond measure. But I do want to, I want to ask you, I asked you if you have any setbacks, and you said you kind of sort of do, but you don't really consider them setbacks because one day you splurge a little bit on eating, and it doesn't matter because of your lifestyle. You have a really healthy lifestyle. Do you have any kind of measures in place to keep that from snowballing?
You mean the bad days from snowballing?
Yeah. So if you sorry if I wasn't clear. If you have a bad day, what keeps it from snowballing into 3 or 4?
Sure. I would say it's the accountability that I have in place in my life. So first of all, I mean, one thing I can tell you is that I literally have maybe about 15, 20,000 people who see a post-workout selfie from me every single day, 6 days a week, every week.
That's pretty motivating.
And so when you get that many thousands of people, if I don't post workout selfies for 3 or 4 days in a row, guess who's getting some emails? So that and not only, and by the way, it hasn't happened, but I know it would happen if I did. And I've asked certain people, if you see me fall off the wagon, hit me up and talk. Let's talk about it. So there's that. The other thing is I'm doing this. I'm not doing this alone. My wife is very much involved. She doesn't do the 6 days a week. She's not as crazy as I am, but she does 3 days a week with me. She does strength training, and she does do a lot of cardio outside of that as well, but just not as she doesn't have the commitment to 6 days a week. So we have the commitment to one another. There are days when she's strong and I'm not. There are days that I'm strong and she's not. Did I say that? I didn't say
you
the
did.
same thing.
Yeah,
okay,
yeah.
Good.
No, you said that. That's perfect.
So we hold each other accountable, but man, when one of us is off, we never judge the other person. We're like, okay, well, that's what you want to do, And the thing is, neither of us have really allowed it to snowball. But if anybody out there is listening and they know me or my wife Stephanie, if you've listened to us in any of our podcasts, you know that if one of us has something to say, we're going to say it. And if one of us was to snowball, she would say, Cliff, get off your butt and go work out. Or, hey, okay, you asked me to go and get you a half a pint of ice cream and you sat down and ate it and you didn't work out. But that was last night. And there ain't no way in heck I'm getting you anything tonight or tomorrow. Good. That's just how that would happen.
That sounds like a really helpful relationship. You can rely on each other to help you both move in the proper direction that you want to go.
Yeah, and not only that, but also she realizes that every now and then, I say this because it was probably a week and a half ago, Stephanie brought me home a pint of Grater's ice cream, which was raspberry chocolate chunk or something. And it was a half pint, and I ate the whole thing in one sitting in the living room floor, and that was my dinner that night. Oh. And that is not a healthy thing. It's not something I would normally do. I'm like, but you know what? I'm intentionally choosing to do this tonight, and I'm going to be fine with it. And it's not going to kill me. And yes, today is my day off of working out, and it's going to put me pretty much over my calories for the day. I don't care.
Yeah.
And that's how it was. And I'm like, but I am still committed. So here's what I can say, Glenn, is I haven't had that snowball on me yet. And I'm praying that it never does. But I have a sense that I have enough momentum that will help me keep from doing that. And the other thing is I have put so much of this out in public. So much of it is out in public that man, if I feel almost the compulsion to do it so that I don't let other people down. And yet at the same time, I refuse to let that be my motivation.
Well, I got to say, I really couldn't be more impressed with your attitude and it really is your new thought process, your mindset, your way of life. And I love what you said about the ice cream, and I could not agree more. I think it's exactly perfect. And there's so many people who are shuddering at the thought of eating a pint of ice cream and not working out because that would mean failure to them. And you did not see it as that. And I am totally on board with that because I don't see it as a failure either. You indulged a little bit. That's okay. A little bit, as long as it's not a daily thing, and which it's not. So you're there.
Yeah. Dude, I'm living a whole new life. I'm a new person. And by the way, and that's the other thing. I am actually living life every day. I don't allow myself to work 80 hours a week anymore. I very, very rarely do I come into the office before 10 a.m. and very rarely do I ever leave after 5 or 6 in the evening. So
wow, very nice.
Or before, or after. So I usually, I work a good solid day and stuff like that. And I come in on Saturday every now and then. I'll work up a couple hours, or maybe I might even come in on a Sunday. But it's nothing like what it used to be. And here's what I can tell you: in 2015, one of the things that I did, I said I'm gonna do something. I said I want my physical fitness and health to be the same level of priority that I had put my business in 2008. And what that meant was, remember I told you in 2008, all I did was work, and I did nothing for physical activity.
Right.
I'm in a place in my business where I've got enough financial success in my business, and I've got systems in place that it allowed me to make this decision, to make this decision. But I made this decision in the beginning of 2015, and I said, I'm going to put all my time, effort, and energy into working out, and I'm going to do almost nothing in my business this year.
Wow.
And I literally worked 4 months in 2015.
Wow.
That's it. That's all I did.
That's amazing.
Now I earned $212,000 less in income, in business income last year than I did the year before, but it was so worth it.
Good. You need to have your health.
Yeah, and it was so worth it. And the reason why I did that, Glenn, is I said, you know what? Here's what I know is I want to go so far to the other extreme of health and fitness, because when I come back and I need to focus on work again, I don't want to bounce all the way back to the other end. I figure if I stretch the rubber band out and I stretch it so far to the other extreme, when I come back, I'll come back somewhere in the middle, because that extreme measure has been stretched out, if you will.
Right.
So, and that's what happened. And I'm back into my business, and I'm totally on it.
That is wonderful. That is fantastic. So I imagine people can hear this ongoing story on the Cliff Ravenscraft show, correct?
Absolutely. Just go to cliffravenscraft.com and you'll find the Cliff Ravenscraft show there somewhere. And if not, the best thing to do is just look on your favorite podcast app. Just look for Cliff Ravenscraft show or the Cliff Ravenscraft show. Either way, it'll pull up. But yeah, I've been sharing this 641 episodes as of today, and I will continue to share my life online, hoping to entertain, encourage, educate, and inspire other people around the world by sharing whatever experiences I've had in life and what things I'm learning through life.
That is awesome. I'm here on episode 76, so I don't think I'll catch up, but I'm working on it.
Well, I really appreciate you giving me the opportunity to share my story, Glenn. And I got to say, man, thank you so much for your coaching. You helped me break that plateau earlier this year.
Oh, my pleasure. And
guys,
anytime. It's an open offer.
And I know that you're not asking me to do this, but folks, let me tell you, Glenn's got some programs he can tell you about on his website where you can purchase things, where he'll tell you about eating plans and and menu guides. My wife made some of the menu items that you had on that thing that you had given us out of the PDF document.
Mm-hmm.
Amazing food, wonderful stuff. And yeah, guys, if you need a coach, Glenn's your guy.
Well, thank you for that. And I have one more question I would like to ask you before we part.
Okay.
And I've been asking a lot of people this lately. It's kind of my a new series I'm doing. And the question is, what motivates you? And regarding health and fitness, what motivates you to stay healthy and fit?
What motivates me is the fact that I know that if I do not get my heart rate up to enough where my body starts to produce sweat, and do that for a minimum of 20 minutes and then carry it on for a short period of time or even a long period of time after that, then I know that I won't kick on the right sort of cytokines in my body. And I know for me to be, I trust that at this point, I'm going to live until I'm 80 years old. And if I want to live, if I want to be a healthy and fit 80-year-old, I won't be able to do that unless daily I turn on those C10 cytokines. And that's what motivates me every day.
All right. That is fantastic. I will make sure that is on the show notes page as well. Cliff, any last words?
Dude, I just want to say to people, train for life and train every day.
Train for life, train every day. Words to live by. Well, Cliff Ravenscraft, I thank you very much for your time. And once again, you've been very inspirational. I really thank you for just being out there and sharing this with the world. You joined me with my quest for helping 1 million people find good health and fitness. And I applaud you for that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the Live Fit Podcast. Please subscribe and share with someone you care about. Read show notes, articles, resources, and learn more about our weight management programs at livefitpodcast.com. Once again, thanks for listening, and always remember to live fit.